Hey everyone, we just finished recording an episode with one of our mentors, our sisters, Dr. Mindy Pelz.
And like always, whenever we get a chance to chat with Mindy, it's always fun, and she's so exciting and so engaging and so passionate about what she does, and it's just infectious to listen to.
Yeah, we had a great conversation around menopause, perimenopause, women's hormones in general, and really big picture stuff of how these transitions bring up so many emotions and how we really need to change the lens in which we are looking at these changes that happen in women's lives.
Yeah, and you guys went into a deep dive for those women that are really interested in learning how to implement fasting into their routine. So you're going to find out a ton of great information on how to exercise that fasting muscle throughout your monthly cycle.
Yeah, she kind of goes through 5 pillars of hers that she used as she was transitioning in perimenopause that you can implement at home every day, just as lifestyle changes. So it's a really good one to listen to.
Yeah. So
Enjoy. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Health Ignited. Dr. Nick and myself, Dr. Sonya, and today I'm super excited to be interviewing one of my soul sisters, Dr. Mindy Pelz. So we met Mindy several years ago now, and I think one of the things that really inspire us about Dr. Mindy is her laugh, for sure, and her energy and her motivation and just her drive to really make a difference in the world. What do you think?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, Mindy's energy is infectious. I mean, the moment we got a chance to meet her, it was excitement and joy and curiosity. And, since then we've got to see her as a mentor and see her, educate so many people on the principles that we love to teach on. And it's been an absolute joy to watch you grow and to be a part of the journey with you, Mindy.
You guys, what an intro. Thank you so much. Normally I get read like the same thing over and over again. That was incredible. And I was laughing to myself, because I was thinking, yeah, the first time we met, you were in starvation mode. Weren't you fast?
That was her first experience of fasting, and I wanted to punch people.
Yeah. Yes. So any joyful person coming to you at that point was probably like a drink of water, or a bite of food.
Yeah. And look where we are now.
Right. Exactly. But I love you guys, and thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being such an inspiration, like Nick was saying too. It's just watching you grow and watching you inspire thousands and thousands of people. It's just, it gives hope, I think, especially in a time like now, in this last year. It just gives a lot of hope and faith to us and also to other individuals that, we can focus on what we can control. And I think that's one of your biggest teachings. And today, we're going to dive into menopause and fasting and women's cycles and transitions and all the juicy stuff. So maybe you can start off with talking a little bit about your story and why you feel like it's so important to change the conversation around menopause.
Yeah. Oh, it's well said, for sure. When I hit 40, I had really one goal, and that was to fit into my skinny jeans. The funny part of that story is, do you know, what are those jeans? I think they're called Hudson's, that have the little pocket on the back of them. And they were like all the rage when I turned 40, but I had like a little muscle butt. And so I needed to like reduce down the muscle butt so I could look good in those jeans. I kid you not. Like, that's all I wanted. I just want to look good in a pair of Hudson jeans.
It's good to have a goal.
It was a little bit of a shallow goal, but my best friend looked amazing in these Hudson jeans, and she had long legs and a thin butt. So anyways, that was my goal. It's like, okay, I'm gonna look good in Hudson jeans. So I went sliding into 40 doing what a lot of women do to get fit, which is exercise a whole bunch and eat a whole lot less. And at that time I was paleo. I didn't really know about the ketogenic diet. So I accomplished my goal at 40. Within 3 years, between 40 and 43, my mental health just unraveled. And it was pretty much started with, I'm not sleeping, which was really weird because I notoriously been a great sleeper. I could sleep anywhere, anytime. But all of a sudden I was waking up 2-3 times a night. And then I would have to wake up and I was drenched in sweat. And I'd have to get up, change the sheets. I'd lay out like 3 different types of pajamas for myself because I knew I was going to have to get up and totally change my clothes. I even got to the point where I didn't want to wake Sequoia up to get him out of bed to change the sheets. So I had a sleeping bag next to me that I would change my outfit, and then I would pull the sleeping bag into bed with me because my sheets were so wet. I mean, it was horrific. And then that kind of led to a lot of depression, anxiety. And I'd never really understood clinical depression before. I understood bad days, but I didn't really get that people who are depressed are just, they can't see the upside of life. They're just neurochemically off. And I started to experience that for the first time. And there was no reason for me to be depressed. I just was sad all the time. And then it actually finally led till about 43 that I was like, this is hell in my brain, that I like had suicidal thoughts. I was like, I'm not sure I can do this. This is horrible. So I went looking for answers, and that really was what launched this journey, because the answers I got were either from my friends who had gone through it, kind of laughed at me and said, buck up. This is the way, this is menopause. You're in it. It's hell. Now you know what we've been going through for the last several years. My sister, I was like, okay, well, let me go to my older sister and, see what her experience has been. And she's like, oh, I just got on antidepressants and I was fine. And I knew that wasn't an option for me. And then one day I was at a science fair for my kids' school, and I was standing next to one of the very well-respected OBs in the school. And I was like, I don't normally talk shop to people at that point, but I was desperate. So I turned to her and I told her what I was experiencing. And I said, what do you think I should do? And she stopped looking. It was such a profound moment because we were looking at this science experiment. She stopped looking at it. She turned and looked at me and she said, Mindy, I have a practice full of women with these symptoms, and my medical textbooks have failed me. I have no idea what to do with these symptoms. And then she turned it on me and said, what are you doing naturally for them? And I left that moment and I said, okay, if it's happening to every woman, there has to be something environmental that is causing so many women to have these menopause experience, these symptoms. And that just launched me to find my own journey and to figure out, I was clear I wasn't going to do this with medication. So that's how I came up with 5 things that I really needed to change in my lifestyle that I wasn't attending to. And I really have come to this place now that we can really use lifestyle as we go through our perimenopausal years, but we have to be aware that the lifestyle has to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you brought up so many good points in that story with even your older sister saying that she just went on antidepressants, and there's so many women misdiagnosed, and it's just they don't understand that drop in those hormones, especially testosterone, one hormone that's not actually talked about in perimenopause, menopause, and progesterone and estrogen is going to cause that dread in our bodies because there's so much havoc going on all at once. And these hormones are just communicating what the environment is telling them. So we'd love for you to maybe go over those 5 things that you realized or changed or know that lifestyle factors make a difference in.
Yeah, absolutely. I heard something about progesterone the other day that I loved, that progesterone is the hormone that says everything's going to be okay. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's what I was missing. I mean, and it's so easy when that hormone goes away for us to look outside ourselves. If you don't have the hormone telling you everything's going to be okay, then your brain starts to find all the things that aren't okay. It's really, I wish if I could go back and talk to my 30-year-old self, I'd be like, love on that progesterone, girl, because
Yeah.
you're so lucky to have it.
Best friend.
She's your best friend.
Mhm.
So yeah, the 5 things that I really worked on, and I think that to give it some context, and I know you guys know this, and just to fill the audience in, is after 40, I really have started, now that I'm 51, seeing that it is this process where your ovaries are like, I'm done. Like, I've shown up for you every month and I've got some remaining eggs in here, and I'm just going to slowly back out. And it's going to take me about 10 or 15 years to just kind of back out of this gig. And I'm going to hand the job over to your adrenal glands. So just know that I'm in retirement. I'm just going to slowly back away. And I don't think I realized that. I think I was like, just took my ovaries for granted, that they would just be there to make hormones for me and show up the way I wanted them to show up. So when I look at the 5 things, to me, it's like a gift to my ovaries and to my body to say, hey, you know what? I honor that you've done your job. And I think Sonya, I've told you this before, that I had this moment in meditation one day where I just wept out of appreciation for my ovaries, because I was like, you showed up for me month after month after month, and you gave me 2 of the greatest joys of my life, which are my children. And now you're going away and you're not giving me hormones, and I don't want to villainize you. I want to honor you and thank you. So I've actually spent a lot of time just appreciating this incredible organ. But the 5 things that really have to change as your ovaries start to make their retirement tour. That's what I'm going to call it.
Tour. I love it. They're saying their goodbyes to the rest of
They're telling the other organs they can't be there anymore for them.
a good time, but
is the first one is I changed how often I ate. So as you guys know, I just had to stop eating all day. And I honestly grew up in the breakfast is the best meal of the day club. That was what I thought. So I moved into learning how to fast, which was really key, especially for any woman who wants to keep her weight down. I found that when I fasted more, I didn't have to work out as much. And I really liked that as a tool. The second thing is I started varying my foods. So, keto is definitely super helpful to the perimenopausal woman, but too much keto, as you guys know, is really hard on progesterone. So I had to learn how to use food as well as fasting to heal me, and how to vary both of those, which that's an art unto itself. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is I dove into the microbiome, and I started to see oh my God, we have a whole set of bacteria that break estrogen down. And I went down a rabbit hole of okay, well, let me figure out what the strains of bacteria are, and let me figure out what foods are there that I can help support these bacteria. And so I became obsessed with my microbiome and feeding it to try to help to balance hormones. Detox was the 4th one. My lead for sure came out and really led to the depression. And so I learned how to detox. And then the last one you taught me, Dr. Sonya, you get the credit for this one. And that was rushing woman syndrome. And I'm still working on it. I'm getting there. But really learning to slow down, to say no. I started building buffers into my schedule where Friday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, I don't, if somebody invites me to go somewhere, unless it's a profound event, I say no. Those are my time for myself. I changed my workouts. I stopped running all the time, started doing more yoga and weightlifting, and just really trying to reorganize my rushing life. And those are the 5 things that I keep coming back to. So whenever something goes off, I just go, okay, where am I with these 5 things? For example, so I'm 51 now. I thought I was a month or 2 ago. I'm oh, I think I'm officially going into menopause. I didn't have a cycle for a while. And then there's little voice in the back of my head was yeah, but you've been under a lot of stress lately. I wouldn't be surprised if progesterone's just hiding, and that you appear to be going into menopause and not having a cycle, but it's really because you tanked your progesterone again. And sure enough, I got my cycle this week after 2 weeks of de-stressing.
Right.
So I've just learned to use those as ways to navigate this without medication.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's all self-inquiry, right? You've been in that space of self-inquiry and really understanding um, what needs to happen. Sorry, talk about self-care. Our youngest is at home today, so Dr. Nick's just going to step out.
That's awesome.
He's not feeling well. So yeah, I think that piece is so important that you said those 5 things of just like recognizing where you're off. So it kind of takes the stress away from having to know everything all the time too, right? It gives women a little bit of freedom to be like, okay, these are my pillars, and which part of my pillar am I not serving right now? And I think one thing that you brought up that is important to speak about is when the ovaries are saying goodbye, there's grief that happens, right? I think a lot of women aren't maybe aware that there's grief happening in the body and the mind. So when we are going through perimenopause or menopause and you're having all these other feelings about your world outside of you, there's this moment of grief that needs to be honored. So I think what you did was so beautiful. And I'm hoping that all the women that are listening today really take that piece to heart, because it really is an honoring of the body. And it starts so young, wouldn't you say? Like when we're in our teens or even younger and learning about the period, or when it shows up, it's like it's an inconvenient right away.
Right.
And that's where I try to teach a lot of young women of like, no, this is something that's really going to serve you. And you hear so many women saying, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to do the shot so I don't have to have my period, or I'm just going to do the IUD so I don't have to have my period. And there's this interesting relationship, but then menopause comes and it shows you the gift that it really was, because then we miss it. Right?
Yeah.
We miss those feelings. We miss the ups and downs because there's this numbness that kind of shows up. So when you came to know these pillars, how were you able to, satisfy your body's needs, and then satisfy your mind's needs, and satisfy also your needs as a woman moving through this time with a family?
Yeah, that's a great question. And let me say one other thing on what you were saying about how this is the way I interpreted what you said is, I feel like when we go into puberty, there's a couple of things that happen. So one is, I don't know about you, but the sex ed that I got, or the health talk that I got at 13 was, you're bleeding now. Here's how you manage blood and you can get pregnant. That, to me, that limited education has to stop. We need to help girls see, hey, here's one estrogen, you need to make estrogen. Here's what progesterone's doing. Here's what is happening when you ovulate. Testosterone's coming in. Like I'm visioning a world where we start to teach girls what the different ebbs and flows of her cycle looks like, and not just tell her to, take, well, at least the way I was told was take Midol for your cramps and, buck up because it sucks. Or birth control pill. That's right. Yeah. So I see a world where we're going to go back and we're going to help the younger girls see how they can do this differently. The other thing that I think that menopausal women don't understand, and I put myself in this category, is that when you look at a girl who is 13, just getting her cycle for the first time, it takes a couple of years for the brain and the ovaries to get a groove with each other. And we honor that and we know that. But then when we come to menopause, we don't honor the fact that it takes a couple of years for it to undo its groove. So this idea that menopause is a switch that just gets turned on and one day you're in it and the next day you're out of it, like we need to get rid of that. That's the first thing. And so my goal, and this is one of my visions for the menopause reset, is that with that book, it gets in every 40-year-old's hands. And maybe we can put it together with your book. We'll do it like a package. Right. Now my visioning.
Right. Mine goes into like the beginnings of what you were just speaking to, of what your hormones are doing and when you're getting your period and putting that together.
Yeah. Because if I had known going into 40 what was about to hormonally change for me, I could have saved myself a decade of suffering. I'm not going to lie. Like it really, I always say menopause is an extreme sport, but it didn't have to be. And it was just because every time a new symptom came up, I had to go do the research to figure out what lifestyle had to match it. So each of those 5 things were really created out of necessity when they showed up. And now that I've been working those 5 things for so long, I really understand like, oh, like one of the most recent ones that I've been thinking about is my skin. You know, as you go into menopause, the first year you're in menopause, you lose 30% of your collagen. Okay, well, that sucks. That's a lot.
That sucks.
Can we talk about that for a moment? But, you know, like, I'm not going to go do Botox. I'm not going to, you know, use harsh chemicals on my face. I'm committed to doing this naturally. So, but now that I understand why I look more wrinkled, why my skin is so dried, why when I'm drinking water, I never feel like I'm fully hydrated, why my back hurts a little more when I go run, like I go, oh, I don't have as much collagen. Okay, what tools do I now have to raise collagen up? So I've been doing Juve, the red light therapy, and I've been doing more collagen powder. And so I think that what the big aha on both of these times of life is we need a toolbox to manage it. And then once you understand it, you know which tool to pull out for which symptom. So I think that has been really helpful and put me at ease. I no longer feel like, oh, I just want to get on the other side of menopause. I feel like I just know what I need as the symptoms show up. And that is a gift I would love every woman to experience. And I also think there's so much we can do with our hormones with lifestyle. And the modern lifestyle is really out of congruency with hormonal health. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. When you know, speaking with women, I often bring up the fact that, you know, maybe 100 years ago, women were living in a village style community. So even raising your family, you weren't doing alone. You were doing it within the village.
Yeah.
And, you know, many were feeding off of the land and were more connected with the land. And, you know, the roles of women have changed too. And this can be a whole other real podcast, really, since the feminist movement, which was a necessary thing to really help, you know, break that glass ceiling and make our voices heard, and very, very necessary. And it also tipped the scale in this interesting way where there's confusion on like, okay, well, what is my role now? And so what happened is things shifted. So the homemaker, you know, the one that's cooking and cleaning and nurturing, all of a sudden the lens that we were looking at that position with changed. Instead of honoring the mother and honoring the woman that's, you know, the center of a community, we were like, well, no, I need to be the CEO, or I need to be in this fast-paced world and be on par with men. And I think we lost sight of our true power and our gift, that we were already beyond them.
Right.
And my husband will agree when he comes back. And I think it created confusion, not only in our minds, but in our physiology. So our physiology is now just trying to navigate this new way of being. There's nothing wrong with it. It's going to take time. And you alluded to the journey of, you know, when we first start our periods to when we're going to be releasing that time. It's not a switch. I love that you said that, because it really is a journey, and it's such a powerful journey if you anchor into the things that you're speaking to.
Yeah.
So one of the first things you said that was one of your pillars was fasting. So I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about fasting in women and how we need to do it differently, because you're really great at educating on that, because that is so true. And I am definitely a subject of that.
Yeah. You can see a difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Huge difference in changing the way I fast to me trying to keep up with the way Nick was fasting.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So when you start to understand that as a woman, you just have to fast differently. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that and how that supports women in perimenopause and menopause.
Yeah, it's such a good discussion, and one that just like the ovaries are slowly backing away, you know, learning how to fast for your hormones wherever you are in your cycle, there's an art to it. So if you're hearing this for the first time, know that there's some practice, and the more you do it, the more you really get in sync with it. So for the menopausal woman, and when I say menopausal, to me, that term is perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. So it encompasses it all. one of the things that happens as estrogen starts to decline is we become more insulin resistant. And there's no better tool in the toolbox to undo insulin resistance than fasting. Now, I think. I mean, don't you think? It's better than exercise, better than it is the most amazing tool. Mm-hmm. So as a woman goes through perimenopause, if she's feeling more inflammation, if she's feeling more brain fog, if she's I hear so many women that are like, I'm not doing anything different and I'm just putting weight on. Those are all signs of possible insulin resistance because of the changes in estrogen. So for me, that was exactly what happened. I was running all the time. And this is where I started to really get my hormones in a horrible place, because in order to bring the extra 5 pounds that was driving me crazy down as I moved into my 40s, I tried to work out more, which, made it a whole lot worse. So fasting was an incredible tool to be able to get to the weight that I wanted to be and to help with the insulin resistance that could have been potentially happening in my body. But on the flip side of that is progesterone, and progesterone doesn't want you to fast. Progesterone doesn't want any cortisol spike. Progesterone wants you to chill out. And so how do you do both of those things? How do you pacify estrogen's changes and progesterone's changes? And that's where I came up with this idea of what I'm now calling the fasting circle, where we look at a 30-day menstrual cycle. And if you still have one, and you say, okay, from about day 1 to day 10, maybe day 11, and everybody's a little different, you go ahead and fast, and things like stimulating autophagy are fabulous for making sure that you keep the neurons in your brain working right. I've recently, and I'd be curious your guys' opinion on this. I recently have been thinking a lot about the cells on the outside of the ovaries. They are actually really receptive to autophagy. And they're also really part of what could be potentially happening around the current virus. There's ACE2 receptors there getting it so it's an input for viral replication, which is a whole nother discussion.
It's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But you've got these organs that are very receptive to autophagy. So from day 1 to day 10, go for it. Fast, do what you need to do. Now, as you move into ovulation, if you're still ovulating, I like to call it, I actually want to rename all the different phases. I actually like to rename all the hormones too, because they're really hard to understand. And I think we should make them more simple. Mm-hmm. So I call day 1 to day 10 the power phase. You could be powerful if you choose to be. You can go into the longer fast. You can stimulate autophagy. You can do keto. That's fabulous. But when you go into ovulation, I call that the manifestation phase, because we're wickedly powerful as far as what we can manifest. Yes, you can manifest a baby during that time, but you've got estrogen high, testosterone high, a little bit of progesterone coming in. So you are articulate. You can multitask. If you want to ask for a raise at work, you should do it during this phase. If you have a conflict you have with your partner, you should do it when you're ovulating, because you're a powerful human in that little window of time. But it also means you should probably fast a little different. I think a 15-hour fast is fine in that ovulation window period. Fine. I don't think you should go into a long fast, just ride that hormonal wave. I believe during that time, you should focus on your gut a little bit more, because you have estrogen coming through. So how do you focus on healing the liver and the gut so you can use that estrogen. And then as we come out of that phase, you get a 4-day period where you can kind of fast again and do what you want. But as you get closer to day 19, 20 of your cycle, this is where progesterone's building and reaching its peak. You really don't want to fast. So there's great foods you can lean into, but you don't really want to be in a long fast at that point. And I only learned this by making the mistake, because I'm if a little bit's good, a lot is a lot better. So once I learned fasting to help with insulin resistance and estrogen, I just fasted all the time. I never really thought about progesterone. And then I started noticing, oh my gosh, my anxiety is going through the roof. My body anxiety, I can't even like sit in my living room without feeling like a sense of dread and like something like that, like something's going to come get me. And then that's when I ran a Dutch test, saw my hormones were tanked and realized, oh, I'm fasting too much. Mm-hmm. So there has to be a rhythm around when we fast for women. And I think that's getting more conversation now in the public eye.
For sure.
Yeah, I think it's amazing to be able to tap into these conversations for women, because it's, like to your point, everyone kind of has an experience of trying something and then it becomes everything. And then you have to kind of pick up the pieces afterwards. So hopefully people, when they listen to this, they can start to, do it more appropriately right off the bat. I'm curious about the genes though. Like you started this conversation about genes, and what happened with the Hudson genes?
Oh yeah. You know what? Next time you see me, I'll rock those Hudson genes. I think they actually went out of style. So I do have a pair though.
Everything comes back. Everything circles back.
Well, I was kind of
asking Nick.
Yeah, of course. I was thinking about making a joke halfway through, like, talking about the depression, all the downswing. It's like, how much of this has to do with the blue genes and how much of this is hormonal?
Right.
Yeah, but this is why I knew it was hormonal, because I was able to fit in the blue jeans. So, it didn't give me the happiness I thought it would give me.
Yeah. Surprise, surprise. That's the metaphor for life right there.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
I love all that you explained, that first half of our cycle. I call it the she power time. And, because like you were saying, that estrogen piece is so important for the brain. And actually it's an appetite suppressant. Because if you think about it, as women, and when we're moving towards ovulation, what's on the top of the mind subconsciously is to create a baby, to create an environment, to attract somebody. And so it's not really on digesting and eating and all those things. It really is just about getting ready to get the party on during that manifestation time that you were speaking to. So I love that you explained that, because I really do think women need to anchor into that more in their menstruating years. So it gets tricky when women are on birth control. It gets tricky when there's other things going on. So I think the more you can tap into the regular rhythm and understand that, then you can look at your own unique picture and understand where you fit into that and how you can pivot things, would you say, to like understand yourself a little bit better and still support that cycle, because we're still cycling no matter where we are, even as menopause. So someone that's perimenopause or menopausal, like you're saying, kind of bringing all of those together. So what would that woman do when she's not cycling? Would she follow the moon? Would she create her own rhythm? Like, where do you see that showing up?
Well, what was so interesting is once I started to share like my journey and how I used fasting to match my perimenopausal hormones that were kind of coming and going at weird times. There was two groups that emerged: the postmenopausal women and the women like in their 20s and 30s. And they were like, well, how do we match our fasting? So, that's how we came up with, okay, well, let me help you figure out how to do it in a 30-day cycle. And then, of course, we got all these questions of like, well, but I have a 24-day cycle. How do I do that? So I've been trying to like come up with some kind of protocol that would help all of these women. And I finally came up with, okay, if we just do like, I call it a 30-day cycle reset. And it's in a new book that'll come out next year. And basically it's like, okay, here's a 30-day process where if you don't have a cycle, if you don't know where you are in your cycle, if you're postmenopausal, then you just start on day one and you go all the way through. And what we're finding right now, we've tested this out with a lot of our resetters, is that it syncs people's cycles back up. And we actually have 5 cases right now of women that were trying to get pregnant, and they followed this protocol. And they, after a year of trying to get pregnant, 30 days of doing a cycle reset, and they got pregnant, which is really cool. So having said all that, I think the moon part of this is really interesting, because right now I'm running a group of my postmenopausal women through this cycle reset. And I asked the postmenopausal women to line up with the moon, because most women, and I'd be curious your opinion on this, but a lot of women ovulate during a full moon. Mm-hmm. So what happens when we're postmenopausal? I mean, you've been syncing with the moon for 30, 40 years. Like, you don't just stops syncing with the moon, and you still have these hormones. They just don't show up in the same amount. So I'm now really starting to just dive into my research around how postmenopausal women can really map her lifestyle to the full moon. I think that's really intriguing. And you guys may have already been doing this and thinking about this, but I think that's what we need to think about. Otherwise, you just take a 30-day period. You know, we talk a lot about how fasting variation is done weekly. I think it should be done monthly. Mm-hmm. So that's what we're doing with the postmenopausal women.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The moon, I think, we were talking about in the beginning how things shift in menopause. You become more internal rather than external. Mm-hmm. And that connection with the moon, it's almost automatic when you're menstruating. And when it comes to your menopausal period, there's this like syncing of your essence and the moon that happens because you're moving into that wise woman time. Mm-hmm. I think you become the moon, right? Ooh. So then, that power really is there in that connection because you're going back to nature, like you're going back into connecting to yourself and into what's important to you. And that piece of that really is that moon energy. So I think it's really important to sync to the moon when there is no cycle, because that will still create that rhythm in your body. Yeah. And, we age differently today than we did a century ago. Like everyone's living longer. So before, menopause would have thought, you're kind of thinking of end of life almost.
Right.
Whereas now we know that's not the case. Yeah. So if our hormones are declining, like these things that you're talking about today are so important so that we can still keep our stores and our reserves there ready and primed for these wise women years. Because just because you're going into menopause doesn't mean that you're going to decline and everything's going to start declining. But I think that's the mindset that's been going on.
It's really, that is really true. And again, one of the gifts of my platform has been to hear so many women talk about their menopausal journeys. There's, so many women that are feeling frustrated. They don't know what to do. They don't know what advice to take. And yet they're at this really cool moment in time because their kids have grown up. They're moving into a whole new world and phase. Some of them, their marriages have fallen apart, and now they're, stepping out into their own independence. But it's such a time of transition. And if we were healthy going through it, I think we could really help women step into their brilliance at that moment. And yet we medicate it, we villainize it, and we don't talk about it. That's the other thing. No, like I found that there are so many menopausal women that want to talk about it. And it is a really cool pivotal moment that should be celebrated.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering, why do you guys think it's not really celebrated? What is it about, the last 50 years or what have you? Like, why now? Why is it so important now? But why do you think it hasn't been celebrated?
Go ahead.
My initial thoughts are the messaging around women. So I will just tell you, as a woman who's doing this naturally, I'd love if I could put Botox in my forehead and just make myself look like I did at 30. That would be amazing, because that I would line up with society. And society basically says that as women age, they're not beautiful because they have more wrinkles, they might hold on to more fat. And so from a visual perspective, going through menopause is not well highlighted. And then now we have a situation where with all the plastic surgery and everything, women can alter themselves. So I'm actually really interested to see how I age, because I'm doing it natural, and there's very few women that are showing what natural menopausal aging would look like. There's a lot of Botoxed 50 and 60-year-olds. So I think it has to do with our perception of what aging and beauty, I think, is a big piece. The other hard part is that I think there might be a lot of shame for women. I have not been the best. There are moments I'm not the best, easiest person to live with as those hormones are changing. I'm easily agitated. And I keep thinking that there probably are a lot of divorces that happen as women go through menopause. And if you're living with a menopausal woman, I'd love for you to understand that she doesn't completely understand why your breathing makes her want to kill you.
Or chewing. Yeah. Breathing, chewing, walking.
You're chewing. But I mean, like,
could be anything.
Right? I mean, like I've really had to learn how to articulate how I'm feeling to my husband, and then my son, who's been at home. My daughter, as I've moved into this transition, was out of the house. But I've been really trying to say things like, I know that I've been a pretty chill person about the cleanliness of the kitchen, but right now, my hormones make me want to just lash out at you because you didn't do the dishes. And I went off to work. I came home and the dishes are still not done. Like, like having to articulate that because my hormones were so not serving me well. And I think it just has taken a lot of work. Whereas to your point, Nick, it's like, okay, let's just say what people think menopause is. I'm gaining weight. I'm not sleeping. I'm getting more wrinkly, and everybody's irritating the heck out of me. Like, that's not really fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You really have to look in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right? And in so many different ways, your physical body is changing, your mental body is changing, and even like your soul body, in a sense, where the things that gave you significance up to that point, maybe it was children, maybe it was your job, and like things are slowly changing and shifting, and even in your ability to do those things is changing. So then you have to look at that transition as well, the grief around all of that at the same time. And then, if your self-worth was tied to those roles and those masks, those things that you and I have talked about before, then, there's a period of grief that's happening as well. So I think the reason why it's not talked about is because it's hard. There's like the shadow aspect of it that we're not talking about. And it's in every phase, I find. My sister and I were talking the other day about parenting and how hard it is in so many different levels. But all you see on social media is like, it's so great being a mother, and I cherish it. And we love our children. And yet there are days that are just so hard. And in your mind, you may be feeling like, did I make the right decision becoming a mother? Yeah. That doesn't mean you don't love them, but there's just so much shame around having feelings that aren't always positive.
I just read a book, and you guys need to bring this woman on your podcast. The book is called Burnout, and it's by Amelia Nagoski. She and her sister wrote it, and they're like PhD neuroscientists. And in the front of the book, she talks about parental burnout. And I'm like, oh my God, did she just say that? Like, are we allowed to say we get burnout being parents? Like, nobody says that. Like, but she literally talks about why you get parental burnout. And I do think that the dark side of social media is you're looking at everybody's highlight reels. And so in these moments, whether it's parenting or menopause, we have created a culture where it's not okay to say I'm struggling, or it's not okay to show up anything other than non-perfect. It's like we all put on this happy face. So I think that's a big part of it, is that there's not a platform to do it. And that's what I'm honestly trying to do on my social media, is be like, this is me, and all the highlights and the messiness. This is me going through menopause. And I promise you, I will not ever show up anything other than authentically me. I promise you, I will not be Botoxing my forehead so you can watch me age naturally. Those kind of things. I think we need more women to do that, because it allows us all to just be okay in our messiness.
Absolutely. It gives us permission. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. Sonya and I had a conversation just briefly about this last night with regards to the fact that, natural medicine or lifestyle medicine it's the marathon, and things like, Botox or whatever else, that's the sprint, and that's the quick results that we're so accustomed to wanting for ourselves. And it's not that it's right or wrong, but it's, these things take time. Lifestyle medicine takes time, and it takes maybe 6 months to fix the hormones, or maybe longer, because you're doing those 5 things. Detox doesn't happen overnight. So on the side of still wanting to, be beautiful and inwards, outwards, what's your version of Botox?
Yes, I have a version.
Yeah, that you want. I mean, because it's okay. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be beautiful on the outside.
Agreed. Yes.
So
good point.
what's your Botox?
Yeah. So I have a new hack for my Botox hack, and I've come up with it recently, and I think it's working.
Amazing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm doing the Juve every morning, red light therapy, 20 minutes. So I have actually a morning routine that's really working for me, which is meditation and Juve. And so it's like calming the mind, calming the spirit, and then the red light therapy. I've definitely upping collagen, and that has been the most recent thing that I've added in like the last couple of months, is just honoring the fact that I'm losing 30% of my collagen over these years. And so a couple scoops of collagen a day. I've been trying to figure out how to map it around my fasting window. So that has been tricky. But so I've been doing collagen. The other thing I've been doing is I've spent so much money trying to find natural beauty products. And I recently have discovered the dermacolonizer, putting good probiotics on your face like that. And I'll wash my face and put it on a couple times a day. And I really feel like I'm changing the microbiome of my face. I can see the coloring change a little bit. I wear a hat out in the sun. Yes, of course. But I also love the sun and I want vitamin D. And so I've noticed I just don't burn as much if I'm putting the collagen or the colonizer on. The other thing is I go back to the hormones that I need. So I was thinking the other day, I'm like, just because I'm still making estrogen doesn't mean I'm metabolizing it and using it. So what organs do I need to pay attention to? And that's where liver and gut come in. So castor oil packs I've been doing a couple times a week, liver supplements, some of the, I don't know if you guys, what your thoughts are on the organ meat supplements, but I've been testing some of the organ meat stuff out, like the heart and soil liver supplements. And then I definitely notice a difference if I don't eat enough vegetables. My skin is so much drier. So I'm just obsessing on vegetables to help support the gut bacteria. And all of that, like you said, it's a marathon. I'm starting to feel like, okay, yeah, I feel a little bit better now. I feel like my skin is looking a little healthier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, you look amazing, like I said.
Well, thanks, guys.
You definitely radiate, so it's all working.
Yeah, especially with all those beautiful orchids in the background.
Yeah.
Right? Yes.
Right?
I'm getting my hands in dirt by becoming an orchid farmer.
Yeah, all about the microbiome from different avenues. I love it.
Exactly.
Well, it's great because that was one of the conversations we had before we jumped on, was to speak to all the beautiful greenery and colors that you have behind you, and to the point of kids leaving out of the home, how do you fill your cup? And so that was one of the things. But is there other things that you've been implementing that you feel is a little bit easier or more necessary now as a result of being in this next stage of life?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I would say the weirdest thing I'm having right now. So my daughter's 21. She's already off living in Denver. My son will go off to school in the fall. And what's really weird is it's probably hard to even think about this where you're at. But just by being like, just now when Nick had to go and take care of your son, like just by being in the house with your kids when they're little, you're never really thinking about yourself. I mean, you have moments, but you're always like, am I going to eat? Okay, well, then what do the kids need to eat? And I want to go out. Well, where will the kids be? What do I need to do to get the kids? So you're always thinking about where the kids are in reference to what you want to do. Well, when the kids aren't there, you're left to do two things: get to know yourself and get to know your spouse. Mm-hmm. And that has taken it's nice when you have two kids because you sort of, the first one goes and you kind of get, you get a little practice with it. But as the second one's about to go, I've just really had to go back inside. I'm doing a lot more meditation. I'm finding so much more peace and serenity in nature. I've had to really go back to get to know me, because so much of me I gave away to my kids, and happily gave away to my kids. But it's a really cool moment to sort of get to know yourself again, and then to get to know your spouse again. So we are doing a lot of like on a selfish level. So we bought a new car and we bought a fancy bike rack, and our empty nest life is going to look like we live in a beautiful area where there's a ton of mountain biking. So we're going to drive to faraway places and mountain bike. And so we've had to kind of come up with like, what are we going to do now kind of scenarios. We've thought about where are we going to move to? We don't have to think about the kids if we could move anywhere, where would we move? So it really has created like an opening that it's very unfamiliar, but I'm finding meditation, nature, and just great communication with my husband is letting us sort of see that there's a whole new life that's emerging. And as that new life emerges, I get more and more excited. In fact, I'm like, Paxton goes off to college in September, and I'm like, God, that's really far away. Do you maybe you should go now? Like,
I'm ready.
I'm ready. So, but it's a really cool moment to get to know yourself and your spouse again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other thing is like the younger version of me was like, oh, I'm, retail therapy. I'm having a bad day. Let me go shop, things like that. Or let me go look for the next big experience. I don't feel like that. It's like, I just want to see life from a different lens, because I don't have to think about where these children are every single day.
Yeah,
it's a cool. You'll get there. Don't worry.
Blue jeans to freedom. Right there.
Yeah, right. I'm past
10 years ago. Yeah. Forget the blue jeans.
Yeah. So my last question for you, since we're kind of talking about future, is that if you were to project forward 20, 30 years and you see yourself, like, where is that self, and what gift does she have to give to you in your present time?
If she to give to me now?
Yeah.
Whew. I am really clear that what brings me the most joy in life is serving others. And yet there's a way to do it that I don't lose myself. So as I've been like this morning in meditation, I was thinking a lot. This sounds really deep, but I was thinking about the energies around us and how I have been so focused on the physical body, but what is my energetic body? Like, how do I know my energetic body? And so I've been spending a lot of time reading books on frequency and listening to Joe Dispenza and trying to understand that. But the 30 years from now, I know where I want to spend the back half of this life. And I plan on living to like 120, because I think the human body's meant to live to 120. So I want to prove that I could do that drug-free. And, but I want to teach the world and women, especially, how powerful they are. I want to keep empowering people. We live in a moment in time where in the last year, we went from caring about our immune system to giving all our power away to media, to politicians, to big pharma. We went from waking up to going into the deepest slumber about our own internal healing power that I've ever seen. And that has to change. And so for me, teaching women about her hormones, teaching women how to fast, teaching people how to do things that don't cost money, that they don't take time, but help you understand your own internal healing power. I will spend the rest of my life doing that. And so I see 30 years from now, just more people on this path with me. I see a world where we are looking at lifestyle first, that we're turning within first instead of always turning without. I see a world where disease is optional, where medication is optional. And that's where I want to spend the rest of my life really focused on.
I love that. Great answer.
Amazing.
Yeah.
We'll be there with you.
Yes, we will.
I know you guys will. I know that I always say I can't do it myself. I'm really sad at how the world at this moment, how asleep it is. And women, and they don't want to be asleep. That's the thing that my platform, I feel like, has really helped me see, is that they don't know what to do. They just turn on the news and the news says one thing. So they do that thing. But then when you guys show up, when I show up, when many of our colleagues show up and say, but you're this powerful, let me tell you how you're designed. They go, oh, nobody ever told me that. Okay, well, what does that look like? So I think this is why we have to all be as out, in an education moment as much as possible, so that people, and especially women need to believe in themselves again.
Well, it starts at such a young age, right? When we're telling kids or we're telling them what to do, what to wear, how to think, all the things. And so you have to unlearn so much so that you can really recognize that power that's there.
Agreed.
Yeah, I love that you spoke to that. I think that was a really nice cap on the conversation of just empowerment, and the slumber is so true, right? And it's kind of like, just to speak a little bit to everything that you were talking about today, it's the slumber where we go back into our habits. It's just what's seemingly the easiest thing that we could do for ourselves right now, and that's to be in fear, be in frustration, think that someone's gonna save them, and it's something outside of yourself, and it's this whole dialogue that we allow ourselves to believe. And maybe it's us going back to that little version of ourselves that just wants someone to take care of us, and it's not that it's wrong, it's just that doesn't work anymore. It's time to shift.
I heard recently something that's given me a lot of peace, which is when a paradigm is breaking apart, it's the loudest. And right now, the old paradigm of health is really breaking apart, and it's incredibly loud. And so we have the opportunity right now for a new paradigm to emerge. It's very much like menopause, right? Like, I know I have an opportunity to get to know my husband at a deeper level. I have an opportunity to get to know myself, my energetic, my physical, my spiritual self at a deeper level. I'm really fascinated right now about nature. A friend told me about a book called Overstory, about how the trees communicate with each other. I'm like, oh my God, I want to go read that. Like, it's an opportunity, because my old paradigm of mom and of who I was is breaking apart, and a new one is emerging. And so so it's a really cool moment if you step into it and ask the right questions. Just like what we could do as the world right now, we could ask, how did this virus become such an issue? Why is the world so immune compromised? Was there a different way we could have done this? Like, these are all things that the menopausal woman can ask herself, but that the world needs to ask themselves. And in that, something new can really emerge. And that's what I really plan on spending the next 30 years doing, is helping that new emerge for people, because humanity, as you guys know, is on a collision course, and it needs a different approach, but not everybody's waking up to the fact that it's on a collision course.
I heard Valerie Kaur, she's a lawyer and an author, say once in one of her speeches that when we're in darkness, it's like we're in the darkness of the womb, right? And when we're in there has to be a rebirth. Like, there has to be light that shows up. So it's like, I think that's kind of where humanity is right now. We're in the womb of it, and especially of Mother Earth right now, because she has been screaming out to us for a long time, and now I feel like we're in that dark space, ready to rebirth again. So everything that you were just speaking to.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, because you're in the darkness, and then coming out is not.
It's not easy.
For the baby and the mom. It's not easy. But then there's the coming out that is joy. And I think that as a society is what we have to think about right now, is that we're in the darkness. It may get a little more painful, but if we stick with it, then what's on the other side of it could be amazing. So I've been spending a lot of time in meditation, just visualizing the world I want to live in, and then speaking about the world I want to live in, instead of villainizing what keeps showing up on my news feed.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that's a powerful message right there. I mean, that's tapping in that metaphysiology, that which is beyond this physical form, where as Joe Dispenza says, this form follows flow, right? So what if we all held that meditative mind of a brighter future, and embodied that in our lifestyle practices, nurtured ourselves with food, with the movement, with our loving relations. All of those things are going to make that future more meaningful, but also more real.
Thank you, Mindy, for everything that
Oh,
you do.
love you guys.
Being our sister and being our mentor, all of that.
Absolutely.
So we love you so much. Thank you.
Well, thank you guys. I could sit here and just chat with you all day. I just love not only how you guys show up, but just who you are and how people feel when they're around you. So I think we're all on the same energetic vibe and just love you. I can't wait till we can hug again.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. Air hug right now.
Right. Until we're all out of quarantine jail.
Exactly.
Yeah, jail. Yeah.
Before we go though, so you got the book is coming out, or the book is
out.
just a book is out, the Menopause Reset. Everyone can go to where tell us where.
Yeah,
where can
Amazon.
they
Amazon. You can go to the menopauseresetbook.com. And it has all the outlets there. And it's out. It's available. It's meant to be one of those books you can pick up, devour in 24 hours, and off you go. So I'm really pleased with the reception it's been getting. And then the fasting manual, we're still working on the exact title, but it's written. It will be a fasting book for women of all ages to understand how to fast according to her hormonal cycle. So that's coming soon, but it looks like it'll be 2022, early 2022.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
Once you get those author shoes on, it's going to be expected that every year.
Yeah.
I know.
Right?
So I actually have the vision of another book, and Sonya, this one will be right up your alley. I want to write a book of like a love letter from a grandmother to her granddaughter about what she learned about being a female.
I love that. Yeah.
Right. I sort of see it as like a fable. I've never written, fiction, but that's what's burning on my heart.
So good.
Yeah. Because I think we could really, one thing that I see in our academy is you've got these postmenopausal women, and now we've got some like 30-year-old women, and they're giving each other advice. And I'm like, I'm just sitting back and going, hormonal advice is what they're giving each other. And I'm like, this is so cool. Like these postmenopausal women have so much to offer the younger women. How do we help them unify with the younger generation? So
the grandmothers, yes.
Yeah. Super cool.
So I love it. Okay. Well,
so good, Mindy.
Yeah.
So good to connect with you again. And thank you for everything you shared.
Of course. Thank you guys. Love you.